Have you ever felt trapped by your own decisions? Have you ever felt like you were imprisoned because of the very decisions you made? I remember when I was younger, early married, and I found myself lying a lot to my wife. Now, they weren't big lies. I was able to justify it because it was never any of these big, huge lies. There were just all these small little lies I would tell her. And the reason I would tell her these lies is because I wanted to avoid an argument. I didn't want to get into an argument with her. And they were the types of lies where, she would ask me if I did something that she'd asked me to do earlier. And I would tell her, oh, yeah, I did that. Don't worry about it. It's all done. When in reality, I hadn't done that thing. I intended to, and I hoped to get to it before she knew that I had lied to her. But the reality was, this was becoming a pattern and a habit in my life. And I found myself lying more and more and more to my wife. And it just became easier and easier and easier just to try to, make things more smooth, not to have to deal with the fact that I didn't follow through with what I said I would follow through with. And I felt like a prisoner. I felt like I was enslaved to this pattern I had built in my own life. And the truth is that I was a slave to my own sin. Romans 6 talks about this. Romans 6 talks about that we are either going to be enslaved to sin, which leads to death, or we're going to be enslaved to obedience, which leads to righteousness and life. See, the reality is we are all enslaved to something. We are all servants of something. Nobody is your own master. We all serve something. And the Bible teaches us that we all start out serving sin, every single one of us. As little babies, we're born into this world serving sin. And for any of you who are parents, any of you who are older siblings or aunts or uncles, and you've been around little babies, you've been around toddlers, toddlers, they're selfish, they're sinful, right? The first words they learn are mine. They're born, they're naturally like that. No one has to teach them those things. And that's all of us. And yet we become enslaved to those things, enslaved to sin. But the good news in Romans 6, it talks about that God has come and Jesus has set us free from the enslavement of sin. And if we're going to serve something, if it's not sin, then if we serve God, then there's freedom in that. That as we serve God, we actually experience freedom in this life. It's an amazing, beautiful thing. And as we submit ourselves and become enslaved, as Romans says, to obedience, what we find is righteousness and freedom. And I remember going back to the story where I was caught up in all of these lies. I literally couldn't get out of it. I couldn't stop. And so finally one day I had to sit down with my wife and I had to look her into the eye and just admit to her that I had been lying on so many things, on so many levels. And I was trapped. And just admitting that and saying to her that I'm not going to be enslaved by this anymore, that I could choose not to serve that sin anymore because of the power of Jesus in my life. It set me free that day, and really it changed the course of my marriage. It changed the course of just who I was as a person, because those lies were leaking out into all areas of my life. But I didn't have to be a slave to it anymore because of what Jesus had done. And that day I chose to be a slave to obedience to God. And through that I have experienced righteousness in my life, and I've experienced new life in things like my marriage. So today, if you're feeling trapped by your sin, if you're feeling trapped by the choices and the things you serve, I want to encourage you that God has set you free. You do not have to be a slave to your sin anymore. That you can choose to follow Jesus and be enslaved to Him and obedience to Him and experience righteousness and new life and freedom today. Thanks, guys. I hope you have a great day. Bye.